I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. June 2nd, 2020. Interesting times continue, Lance.
They do, Bob, and I think interesting times for us as SBA participant lenders will continue for a while.
Yeah. Well, you know, what goes around comes around, and Katie is new to this industry, and she and I have parallel tracks. I was a junior banker when Prime hit 21 and a half, and there was no credit at all. So hopefully she'll learn from that. And when you and I are long gone and she's the grizzled gray veteran, she goes, I remember back in 2020. Katie, our editor, Lance, welcome. Let's see. Let's go into the questions real quick. Does the income from PPP processing fees affect your budget? And I worded that poorly. We're trying to say, did it affect it positively? It didn't make that much of a difference, or I don't know. That's really what I'm getting at. Was that a one shot in the arm to your bottom line? That's what I'm trying to get at, Lance.
Well, Bob, it has to be a shot in the arm for the current quarter that ends in June, right? Because most banks are going to collect that income. It is non-interest income, and that ought to have a very positive impact on the bottom line of the bank.
And over half the people say that is a positive impact to their balance sheet, their income statement. So, yeah, it's more work, but we're making money on it. And we always like to ask these questions. I hear I'm specifically talking about 504 and 7A. And what I'm trying to determine, Lance and Katie, is did PPP cannibalize some of our 7A processing?
And the simple answer to that, Bob, is probably yes.
Yes, yeah, and that's what the poll shows. Yeah, 57% says no, we're not going to hit it, but hopefully we're offset by that by PPP fees, right, Lance?
Yeah, absolutely. The PPP loan origination process and soon the PPP forgiveness process has taken away a lot of staff resources at most institutions, and it's slowed down the 7A and 504 loan process. But most institutions are getting back on track, looking at regular 7A and 504 deals. The 504 refinance right now is unbelievable with the rates where they are on the debenture. The rates on the debenture right now are below 3%. So there are some opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's important for us to emphasize that. Obviously, we're in a crisis mode, but this is different than the 80s when I grew up in the Great Recession, that credit is available. In previous downturns, credit dried up. And, during the Great Recession, we saw the numbers. Credit was non-existent, and here it's just the complete opposite, right, Lance?
Oh, absolutely. If you consider a 504 refinance, the blended rate on what the bank does, if you have a competitive rate on the bank side and then you've got the 504 debenture rate, the blended rate's going to be somewhere. It's going to be reasonably close to Wall Street Journal Prime, so it's a pretty incredible interest rate.
Well, and I think we're going to talk about restaurants. We have no new news, so we were talking, and what we'll do is when we have a slow news day like this, first of all, we will end early, and second of all, we'll have a theme, and our theme today are restaurants. So are restaurants open where you live, work? Are you able to go out?
Bob,
and I don't know why I don't know. If you don't know if the restaurant's open where you live, you have issues.
Yeah. In Arkansas, Bob, restaurants are all open for dine-in service, but at a very limited capacity.
Interesting, 74%. I'm a little shocked at that, Lance.
Well, I think, there's segments of the restaurant industry. I know a lot of institutions, Bob, right now are afraid of restaurant lending. But one example is Domino's. Domino's actually had a year-over-year increase in both March and April. And there are restaurant businesses that are well-suited to perform well during this pandemic. And there are other restaurants that depend heavily on customers sitting at tables. Those are struggling very mightily.
Joseph, let's move down to the 1 in 4 restaurants slide. One more. We'll go back. Katie, this is your reporting. What do you got?
Right. So this morning I was really looking at updated stats on restaurants, and unfortunately, like we've been reporting before, about 25% of restaurants are not going to be able to reopen after the virus is over and after we're trying to recover. On top of that, right now, walk-ins are down 95%. The business has lost over $30 billion. That's in March, and $50 billion in April. And approximately 90% of businesses of these restaurants are still not open, at least for dine-in services. And 65% say that it's going to take 3 months to a year to actually recover from this. And I think just looking at the restaurants near where I live and some of the things I've been reading in other states, the reason why some of these businesses are not opening their dine-in is because it's so hard to make the ends meet when you have to clean up after every guest so carefully and when you have to do all these extra things to ensure that they're safe. So sometimes it's more profitable to just do carry out right now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's staff turnover, so you have to train staff. And bluntly, Katie and Lance, my wife and I went out, and it is not I don't think it's a pleasant experience. Everyone wearing masks, and it's an interesting experience. We'll leave it at that.
Well, Bob, it's my wife and I also have been out a few times, and of course, had a daughter that had a birthday last weekend. We went out for a birthday celebration. We're all masked up, and we took a picture of it for her to remember, because she may never experience that again, a birthday celebration where everybody that was there had a mask on. And we had to think about it, Bob, because we could only have fewer than 10 people.
Lance, what I want you to do is walk us through where we are today and walk us through what a prudent lender should do in servicing. And the case study that I have I want you to address is we find out that one of our customers, this is in that 1 in 4 category, that they don't plan on reopening. Now, obviously, SBA is going to be making some payments, but what should a prudent lender do in that situation, Lance?
It creates a very interesting environment, Bob, because I am aware of the same thing, restaurants that were good restaurants that had SBA loans that may not reopen. And, right now, those restaurants are probably not on your past due list because the SBA CARES Act are making payments for the restaurants for the next 6 months. I think that there's some things you can do in servicing in the interim. I think a site visit is timely during this pandemic of all your restaurant businesses. You may not be able to fully interact. You're probably going to have to wear a mask when you're doing the site visit, but you need to take a look and just find out what the condition of the restaurant property is. Have communication with the owners, find out what their plans are, because again, SBA is making the payments. It's highly likely that they also got a PPP loan, Bob. So if you have a closed restaurant, a site inspection is relevant. Communication with the borrower and finding out what their plans are as they move. And I know plans are changing daily based on the condition of our country. I mean, not just the pandemic, but the riots that have occurred. And, yesterday you asked the question, Bob, had it impacted our community? Well, at that time it didn't, but now there have been riots in all the major cities in Arkansas, and businesses have been damaged, just like they have in other places. So it's an uncertain time, but you want to communicate with your borrower, find out what their plans are. If their plans are to never reopen, You want a site visit, a good memorandum in file, and it doesn't hurt to already start putting together a liquidation plan if their plans are not to reopen. Again, with the 6 months payments being made for the borrower, they're not showing up on your past due list, but I have a feeling that we will see quite a number of defaults when we come out of the 6 months payments being made by SBA. Businesses that just never reopen.
Give me a best practice in 30 seconds of what you talked about, a memorandum to file for a site visit. What should that memorandum to file contain?
Well, it just is going to talk about the condition of the restaurant. It'll talk about the condition of the collateral. It would include your communication with the owner of the business and what their plans are going forward. Again, I know you can't say, hey, borrower, do you plan to reopen? Because they may fully plan to, but if a borrower gives you a solid, no, we're not reopening, we're done, then you want to include that the results of that communication with the borrower in your site visit memorandum, and just start preparing in those instances where it's certain they're not going to reopen for the pending liquidation that's going to occur. I've got a buddy that does special assets work in Florida that calls me all the time to discuss the condition. I think there's going to be a significant amount of work in SBA liquidation as we go toward the end of the year, the first part of 2021.
Very good. Let's go to Senator McConnell. Katie, what is he saying?
So yesterday we got a little bit of an update. Unfortunately, we didn't get an exact date, but McConnell did say that the Senate will be looking at the PPP Flexibility Act soon. And I don't know if soon, if he's saying that because the riots are going to slow things down in Congress, or if they just haven't had a chance to go over it completely. But it sounds like they're going to be considering the House bill rather than continuing to try to push for the Senate bill that they tried a couple weeks ago. And it sounds like they're open to looking at this House bill instead.
Katie, I love the numbers you put together. Tell us what the numbers show.
So the SBA gave us a little bit of an update at the end of the month on the loan count. This is the total between the two rounds. What we want to see, or what I want to highlight here, is that the banks and lenders under $10 billion in assets did a very significant number of these loans. It's 2.2 million, or about $223 billion worth. And in that second category, the $10 billion to $50 billion category did about 700,000 loans with about $100 billion. So together, that's over 65% of the loans, which was what the second round of the Paycheck Protection Program, what Congress intended that to do. So it looks like it is doing what Congress wanted it to do.
Excellent. Amy asked a great question, Lance. This is for you. If you are aware that a restaurant is not going to reopen, should they be receiving the 6 months worth of payments? Or is that considered a loan that should have been in liquidation? Great question.
Well, it's a great question, and I think there's certainly no SOP 5057-2 section that talks about what happens when SBA makes 6 payments for the borrower, right, and they're not going to reopen. I'm not sure that you put it into liquidation because, again, I've talked to a number of small businesses that are in this category. They don't know what they're going to do. They say, we may not reopen. A couple months down the road, the pandemic may get better, and, they may move into the phase that allows full dine-in capacity, and they may say, hey, I want to reopen. So I don't think that you want to push it into liquidation. You want to give them the benefit of those payments and give them the opportunity They may be saying today, yes, we're going to close, and you'll want to document your file with that as well in case they do, but just indicate in your memorandum that they're not 100% certain because nobody is at this time. Bob, we're all operating on a day. It's just like talking about PPP forgiveness. Every day the story's slightly different. And the same thing is true of the restaurant industry. If you talk to somebody 4 weeks ago when all there was drive-through service, they say, God, we're probably going to close. If you talk to somebody here today where I think they have 30% of capacity, they're still probably not sure long-term how it's going to turn out. But if everybody was back at full capacity, their answer might be different. So, it's an evolving situation. I'm not going to recommend pushing it in liquidation now. I would give them the time to make the decision, and unless SBA comes out with some guidance, but I don't see that happening as well, Bob.
The comment I want to make following up on Lance's memorandum, where the Inspector General has faulted lenders is when there is absolutely zero documentation. I have not seen an Inspector General report where the Inspector General has criticized the lender for a slimmed down memorandum to file on a site visit. So my comment to you is everything Lance said is great and more information the better, but do it and not ignore it. Right, Lance?
Well, and I think that what's important in the memorandum is not to issue memorandum ultimatums being, Bob, the restaurant is going to close, because we don't know. A statement like I communicated with the restaurant owner, they indicated there's a possibility that they may not reopen unless things change. We want to get back with the owner in 30 days and check the status at that time. But I would not, issue language in the memorandum that says, yes, it's going to close, because, again, we don't know, they don't know. It's a time of uncertainty. That's the reason.
Anything can happen in the next 3 or 4 months. Absolutely.
Constant communication with the customer during this period. I think somebody saying, yes, we may not reopen is somebody you're going to put on your tickler to reach out to every 30 days and just see what the status is.
Amy asked a follow-up question, which is great. Says, what if, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to punt to Lance. What if it was previously past due the loan and the SBA payments catch it up?
Well, you couldn't do the payments if they were 60 days or more past due. So, the answer is still the same. If it was past due, the SBA payments caught it up, I still would do a site visit, document the file, talk to the owner, but I still would give them the time to make a final decision because, again, things could change. Everything could open up, and I'm one person who believes once we fully reopen, there's going to be significant pent-up demand that's going to flow out to small businesses throughout the country.
So. Yeah, absolutely.
So, again, the answer is the same.
Very good. Let's see. I want to give a shout out to Joseph Coleman, Lance. Joseph has been elected to the board of directors of our trade association, Specialized Information Publishers Association.
Awesome.
Second generation. I was on the board for a number of years. And so, Joseph, congratulations. And you're representing Coleman well. Lance, that is the organization that gave you your awards.
Yeah, congratulations, Joe. Well deserved. Well deserved.
Very good. Michael, do we have any more questions? On screen. PPP forgiveness. Well, we don't know. That's my answer. Oh, go ahead, Lance.
So can an owner-operator who was not on a payroll in 19 use the PPP funds to pay themselves during the 8-week period if they added themselves to the payroll? That's not a full disclosure question. I don't know how if they didn't have a payroll in 19, I'm not sure how they got a PPP loan unless they were a sole proprietor or a contractor. But you can pay yourself with PPP funds. absolutely. So, my big question is what was the basis for the funding on the PPP loan to begin with? But the PPP funds, as long as they're used on payroll does not exclude the owner, does not exclude, a great example, many small businesses will have a father-daughter, father-son, doesn't exclude paying yourself or children or relatives that work in the business, but I have some concern on what is the basis for their PPP loan. Hopefully, this was a sole proprietor or a contractor.
We have some upcoming webinars that we've talked about. Lance, I know you're very excited about servicing your PPP loans next week.
Yeah, that actually, Bob, I am excited about that, but Bob, I'm more excited about the one on the 17th where we get back to talking about.
Oh, you love that stuff, yeah.
SBA servicing. Bob, I've done so many purchase demand packages in my career that I get excited about servicing the non-performing SBA loans. So guys, come join.
I know, and you give options, and we have more options rather than go slam bam right to liquidation, correct?
Absolutely.
Very good. Our 2020 franchise reports are out. Take advantage of that. That's updated. We give all the charge-off codes for both franchises as well as NICS codes. That's our big report, and that is ready to be. I will be out tomorrow. I will be out yesterday, maybe. I will be out tomorrow. Lance and Katie will be holding down the fort. And thank you all. Thank you for joining us today for the Coleman Report Update and supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Thank you.